Have you ever felt completely uncertain if the choice you're making for your child is the right choice? Have you ever yelled at your child, lost your cool, vowed you'd never do so again, and then found yourself doing it again a few days or weeks later? If so, I want you to know we have all been there. Every parent has been there. When we become parents, it causes us to be under immense pressure. We feel that pressure because we care. It doesn't have to harm us. Pressure can be good. It can be motivating. After all, pressure makes diamonds. Welcome to the Parent Doctor podcast. I'm Dr. Marissa Caudill, an adult and child psychiatrist, wife, and mother of two. If you're here, I'm going to guess that you're like me. You want to be the best possible parent for your children. You don't want to settle for just being a good enough parent. Maybe you're like me and that you're determined to be a cycle breaker within your own family. Here at the Parent Doctor podcast, I blend neuroscience, psychology, and spirituality to give you the tools to confidently grow as a parent. Because it's not just about raising our kids, it's about reflecting, evolving, and becoming the firm but loving parents that our kids need to thrive. I believe in the power of intentional, mindful parenting to help our children see our lives as examples of a life worth living. That might mean making some tough decisions in your life about your relationships, your work, your friendships, your habits. Can that be hard? Yeah, sure. But anything really worth doing is not easy. And that is how we're going to reverse the teen mental health crisis our kids are facing. By leading with love, embracing failure, modeling resilience, and creating homes filled with understanding and connection. So whether you're a seasoned parent or just starting this incredible adventure, you are in the right place. If you find value here, I'd be so grateful if you could follow, rate, and share this podcast. It's a simple way to help more parents discover the support they need on their parenting journey. Thank you for joining me. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Parent Doctor podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Marissa Caudill, and I'm thrilled today to welcome my new friend, Kerry Hew. As with my previous guest, Nitin Agarwal, I met Kerry at this recent Speakers Institute event that took place in Long Beach, California back in September. And I'm really excited to have him here on the podcast because he is a dad of 3 boys. They range in age from preteen to early teen, and he and his wife are really committed to being thoughtful about raising them with intention to have them have more skills as they enter adulthood than either of them had. So, Kerry, tell me more about what you're doing with your boys. I think it's so creative and so wonderful, and it'll be so great if you can share it with more people.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks for having me and making the time to make this podcast. I hope we have a fruitful conversation here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Toronto, moved down here to Southern California in about the year, well, you moved to Northern California in 2001 and then down to Southern California in 2006. My wife, we have been married 17 years now. And yeah, ages 3 boys, ages 11, 13, and 14. And as we raise our boys, I'm very, as you've said, intentional about providing them as much advantage to them to put their best foot forward in society as they grow from this, especially this important stage from boys to men. Growing up in Toronto, Canada, I always felt that I wouldn't say I inhibited myself. I had a great childhood, but I was very introverted and very quiet type, if you will. And actually now I find myself in technical sales that I've come out of my shell a lot in my working career. And I've had a good career, but I think there are so many advantages if you can be an exceptional communicator. And growing up the way I did, being introverted, it's one of the skills that I've wanted to instill into my boys from an early age to, again, just to give them every advantage they can get. I think communication, as one of the reasons we went to the Speakers Institute, is one of the most important skills in life. And if you can have that idea and have that persuasion, if you will, to speak and communicate your story, then that will encourage others to want to work with you and again just allow you to the better potential to do what you want to do or get what you want to get out of life.
Definitely. I totally agree. I think being an effective communicator is such an important skill. And I worry a lot about the young generation with being on their phones and having more
Totally.
texting communication versus face-to-face communication. My husband and I were at a dinner. I may have already told this story on the podcast, actually. So forgive me, listeners, if I've already told this, but we were at a dinner recently on a date. And this couple, two girls, I don't know if they were a couple, but two girls in their early 20s, I would guess, sitting next to us. And the entire dinner, I don't think they spoke to each other more than like 5 words. They were much more interested in like taking selfies and taking pictures of their food, posting it on wherever, showing each other things they were reading and watching on their phones and laughing about that. And then they just got up and left. And I
Yeah,
looked at
it's
my
like
husband and I was like, is that what our kids are going to be like? This is so scary.
it's like you live your life more in the digital space than
Yeah.
in the
Well, and
physical
that's
space.
scary too, because we went to the Apple store the other day. And have you seen these new, like, it's
Yes.
basically like Mission Impossible, these goggles that you put
The
on? I mean,
HoloLens or
yeah,
Holo
yeah, yeah.
whatever they call it.
And
Yeah.
so, like, it puts multiple screens in front of you, like a hologram, and you can have like big screen TV in front of you just sitting on your couch watching these things. And I was like, oh man, this is really wild. Like, a lot of the interactions from real life may be replaced by what is it? Is it the metaverse? I don't know what you call
The
it.
metaverse, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have that challenge here. And one of the rules, not always enforced, but we try to do that is when we sit down to eat dinner, obviously it's no phones in there.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that we've tried to instill and do regularly, at least once a week, is to just take the dog for a family walk. So we
Oh, I love
all
that.
will walk the dog and just go out. Obviously, you leave the phones and just go just a short walk around the neighborhood and just have a nice conversation, right?
Yeah. So good. Yeah. I think we have to be more thoughtful than past generations had to be, because it doesn't happen as much naturally, or it's easy for it not to happen unless you put some intentional thought and effort into it, right? I mean, even
Totally.
family dinners are less common now because I feel like more people are taking their kids here, there, everywhere, eating in the car, working late, whatever it is. I'm going to
Mhm.
have a guest on my podcast later this month who's actually a dietitian, and she's going to talk about that fact, like family dinners and how important they are. But so tell
I
me a little
don't
bit more. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, just saying, I don't want to dismiss all of the digital because I will say that a lot of my kids, they do like to game, at least the older two. And while they don't seem to have as many play dates as I remember having as a kid, they are with their friends more, but because of the communication that you have, you don't have to call them on the phone or be with them physically necessarily, but they are communicating continuously with their friends. So they do get that socialization aspect, but it's
Right.
just different. And I guess as with everything, you want to have that balance, right?
Right. And I think you brought up a good point too, which is, well, and I'll challenge what you said a little bit, because you said that you were very introverted and not a good communicator. And I think those are two separate things. I think of introversion versus extroversion as kind of character traits that exist on a continuous spectrum, with people who are introverted generally preferring more alone time and recharging their batteries by themselves, and people who are extroverted generally recharging their batteries when they're with other people. And the communication piece is really separate from that. I'm sure we both know introverts who are very eloquent and excellent speakers, and also extroverts who can talk and talk and talk, but not really communicate very well.
Totally.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. And I use this term introvert, extrovert as I would know it traditionally, but as I've come to learn about it more, because I do get energy. I'm speaking in front of the at the Speakers Institute, it did give you a lot of energy. I think maybe it's the social anxiety is the better term
Mhm. Yeah.
that an introvert is more associated with. That makes it a little bit more challenging for that person to go out and put themselves in these social positions, if you
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think it's more common for introverts to experience social anxiety, or for introversion to be a presentation of people who are generally more socially anxious. I think that's true. But tell
yeah.
me about this creative solution that you came up with your kids, and what you're turning it into, and how it came about, what you've seen with it. I was fascinated when you told me this story.
Yeah, so I've kind of stumbled onto this exercise, which we're now, my wife and I are putting together a digital course and we're calling it Raise the Rizz.
I love it.
So what's happened, well, again, if I go back to where growing up, I felt I was quiet, or I was quiet and introverted. Again, I wanted a way to teach my kids to be a little bit more outgoing and to teach them these communication skills that I only learned later in life, right? Because it would be advantageous for them to learn earlier. And So I'm always reading and listening to podcasts on how to improve or what are the skills needed or how do you develop this skill of charisma and or storytelling or communication at the end of the day. But what I found was I would consume all this content, I'd listen to so much stuff, but I wasn't improving myself. Like, okay, I can understand this is what you need to do, but didn't feel I was necessarily getting any better at it for my own role in sales today. And so what I came to find out, or what I learned or figured out, is that yeah, I needed to actually practice. I needed to get out and into the field and get reps. But I wasn't doing that because I was just consuming content and not applying the knowledge. So I figured, okay, well, I need a safe space to do this, or I don't have a course to do this or anything like that. So why don't I just do it with my kids? I want to teach them this stuff. I want to get better myself. Why don't we just practice with each other? So they always joke around, like at some point at least, that I want to be a YouTuber, like every kid what does these days. And so, okay, let's practice. If you want to be a YouTuber, let's practice your on-camera work. So what I did was I just said, okay, let's just do these bite-sized 2-minute video exercises where you speak on camera for 2 minutes, just talk about something. And the first day, I would just say, just tell me about yourself. And then they would be like, my name is Gavin, and they just blabber, move around, wouldn't make eye contact with the camera. And then, but we kept doing this consistently for a few days, and literally, I would provide them feedback. Don't say try to maintain focus and stay still. And by the fifth day, it was just amazing the improvement I saw, right? Just doing that 5 days in a row. And so we continued to do this. And as I got into more sophisticated topics and or I gave them story frameworks like I don't know if you've ever heard of the South Park's and but therefore story framework. And I
No,
would
tell me, what is that? Can you tell me about
so
it?
South Park, the writers, when they write a
Mhm.
story, they as their storyboarding, they say this happened and then this happened and then this happened and this happened. And that's the recipe for a boring story. So what they
Okay.
make sure when they're writing, what they see is, and there's a YouTube video on this if you search it, but they make sure that you see this happened and this happened, but this happened, therefore this happened. So if you put
Mm,
something in that framework, it just makes things a lot more interesting. And
sure.
their stories always follow that framework when they're writing the episodes. Yeah. So I just layered on different skills and added frameworks like that. And then one day I just said, tell me about your day and use the story framework and button therefore. And they came out with a story of something that happened at school. Like my kid, I found out my kid went to a detention and it was because of a silly reason. But the whole thing came out, and I went to my wife and said, "Did you know that this happened?" And she was like, "No, I never knew." Because all we know from the kids, well, we know nothing because when you ask them, "How was school today?" Good. Anything exciting happen? No. Right? So they just don't open up naturally, at least our kids. And so when we did these exercise those following few days and weeks, we got all this information that we never otherwise would have. And that just adds to the next layer of conversation that we can have with them.
Are you a parent who wants to read all the parenting books and you have maybe a growing list or stack on your nightstand, but somehow you just never seem to find the time to get to them? If so, I totally relate to you and I want you to know I'm here to help. Every month on the third Wednesday, I read, summarize, and present a parenting book that I have chosen that I think is a great one. And I do this via Zoom. If you'd like to get into the Empowered Parent Book Club, go to theparentdoctor.com/book club. This is totally free. It's a public service that I provide, and everyone who signs up gets access not just to the replay in case they can't make it to the live Zoom, but also to an actionable PDF that I create custom for each book that we read. So I would love to have you. This is a growing community now of over 200 members. These are like-minded, engaged, energized, supported parents who want to be more empowered for the sake of their kids. If you'd like to join us, again, please go to theparentdoctor.com /book club. See you there.
And then I started to put questions in that they would ask me, or that for my own practice, but things that they would learn about me. So things like, what were you thinking about, or what was your favorite subject when you were in school at their age? And through these stories, they learned things, or my stories, that they would never otherwise would have heard. So things like, when was my first girlfriend, what was her name, type of thing. And again, just opens up another layer of communication with your child or with your kid. And so through all of this, we just discovered, like, through these sequencing of questions, through the deliberative practice and the applied feedback, we all got better. We all learned more about each other, and we created that stronger bond between us that it just now lives on forever, right?
I've been biting my tongue not to interrupt you, because as I listen to my podcast recordings, I realize I get excited and I kind of have a little ADHD maybe, and I interrupt people. So I'm trying to be better, but I love so much about what you just shared. So many things. So, okay, let me break it down. I love that this stemmed initially from your desire to grow and your son's desire to grow into something that was exciting but a little uncomfortable, like being a YouTuber. Maybe they're going to be, maybe they're not going to be, but both of you were able to see an aligned goal there and kind of come together to lean into that discomfort of, yeah, let's do this. I mean, there's no necessary reason that you have to be formally recording yourself to do 2-minute things, but it's kind of fun, and it's an opportunity, as you've discovered, to learn about each other and to
And
invite
that was,
them.
sorry to interrupt. I just want
No.
to, for your audience, that was one son that may have said, I want to be a YouTuber. And they change their mind every week what they want
Yeah.
to do. But for the others that didn't necessarily have that ambition, it wasn't hard to coerce them, if you will, to do it, because it's such a small exercise.
It's a small exercise, and it's also quality time with
Yeah.
dad, right? So it's you giving them your undivided attention and you coaching them. I mean, ultimately it's constructive criticism and feedback, right? But it's not criticism about how you did on the sport field or how you did on your math test. It's much more about like a personal development thing, which they can feel good about and you can feel good about. And how awesome that they have this tangible measure of progress. Because I'm sure you have the videos from day 1 to day 5.
Totally. Yeah.
You can probably look at them together.
Exactly. Yeah.
And all celebrate like the change. This is such an important thing, because repetition builds mastery. And along the way, you're gonna have a ton of mess ups. So I went to an event with Tony Robbins, and he talks about the basketball player, Stephen Curry, and how he practices like 1,000 shots a day for so many years. And how that means he's basically taking this many million shots just to get this many shots in his professional career to be like the best ball player ever. But the ratio, therefore, of like shots he's taken to shots that have made him famous is super small. And so we really need a ton of repetition, and you get that too. This is what my parent coaching was all about too, because we can read all the parenting books and it doesn't help you a lick when you're in the moment with your kid and they're pushing your buttons. If you don't practice with someone who understands how to help you build your fuse to be longer, help you build your emotion regulation skills, then you can't really grow. And it's the same if you don't practice speaking or practicing these sales skills in some kind of real life way, they're not going to get better just from reading the book or listening to the podcast. And you're letting your kids see that not just from, again, a book or hearing it, but by living it. And the lived experience of that is awesome.
Yeah. And we also do a little exercise now where we'll go out in public, and we'll just be at a store getting something. And I'll just say, go give that person a compliment, whatever it is. Right. And
Nice.
just these little things that I don't know what they're thinking, but it's just, again, it doesn't cost them nothing. And it's, again, pushes their boundaries a little bit to help them get, I like to say, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? So that you can grow, because that's the only way you will grow, right?
Oh, I love that. I love that challenge to get your kid in public to go give someone a compliment or do something nice for someone, because those things then will be positively reinforcing that when you push yourself into those uncomfortable situations, you get a good feeling back from it, right?
Yeah.
In a way that isn't always the case, right? If you push yourself in a social situation at school to ask out a girl, she might not always say yes, right? But if you do this in an unexpected way, just bringing more kindness into the world, that's generally going to be positively reinforced. And that therefore helps us to extend ourselves. I love it.
And I'm trying to communicate things in their terms, if you will. Like another example I did recently, well, my wife was away for business, and I said to my oldest one, I was like, hey, just give your mother a call. We'll score some points with her. And he was like, what does that mean, score some points? I'm like, it's just a reciprocity, right? Which is one of the keys of influence written by Robert Cialdini. And just trying to explain these little things in terms that he can understand, say, well, it'll make her feel good. And then maybe one day when if you feel like you want to eat out for dinner, you can say, hey, let's eat out for dinner. And she'll be a little bit more apt to return that kindness down the road. So I was like, that's what I mean by just score some points and bank those points for future reference. So just
Mhm.
these little skills and or techniques, if you will, to help them through life.
So important, right? Because that's how all relationships are. I mean, in an ideal world, relationships and love is not transactional, but for
Yeah.
most of us, most of the time, it really is, right? And that's where tension comes in our relationships, both between parents and kids, siblings with each other, spouses with each other, when our joint emotional bank accounts are low because we haven't been putting in enough of that attention and intentional deposits in that bank account. Like, what did you call it? Like score some points or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, like depositing something, right? Like just doing
Yeah.
something nice. It counts. And so you're teaching them to do that. I love it. I love it
You're
so much.
right, though. Maybe I should put it in some better terms so it's not
No, score some
sounds
points.
like
I get it. I totally get it. But well, maybe that's our generation's language. I don't know what the Gen Z millennial terminology for that is.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and then raising the Rizz, explain to our listeners, because some people may not know what Rizz is. I only learned this myself a couple months ago. So
Oh
what's
yeah. So
the
so
alpha gen slang?
the Rizz is short for charisma. Now, if you ask the young ones, the boys, the Rizz is actually the charisma specifically for a guy to pull girls, right?
Yeah.
So it's meant in that capacity. But for us older generation, shorten it to charisma to Rizz. That's good enough.
That's good enough. Yeah. I learned
You
this
don't need
just
to
the
get
other
into the
day. And I was
details.
telling my son that I was going to talk with you. And I was like, oh, I have to make sure he understands that. Because my son was basically saying, like, it basically is like someone who's like attractive to someone of the opposite sex. And I was like, oh, so it's about like sexy charisma. And he's like, yeah, but mom, don't say that.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to hear me say the word sexy. I was like, okay. But yeah, he was uncomfortable with me saying, like, I've got Rizz. He's like, no, no, no.
Oh, it's so funny. I come up with these like just see it on either Instagram or I'm not really on TikTok, but you'll see TikToks on Twitter or X or whatever. And the latest one I found it's called Mew. And
Yeah,
I asked my son, hey,
viewing.
do you mew? Do you mew? And he's like, how do you know that? You ever heard that term?
I did learn it and I forgot it. I think it means like it's acting in a way to get something or
It's the
eating.
kids. It's they press their tongue up to the top of their mouth and they just
Okay.
hold it there, and that's called mewing. And you can't talk when you're doing it. And the reason they do that is it's working out your jawline to get a nice jawline. And so
Oh,
the whole
no, I
joke
forgot
is
that
a
entirely.
teacher asks you a question and you just be like, they're just like, and that's the time for like, can't talk,
Yes,
I'm
I think I
mewing.
learned the gesture, but I forgot that it was like to tighten your jowls or
Yeah.
whatever. Maybe I need to mew more. Oh, it's so
I
funny.
tell I love the term that they come up with. It's
I'm
hilarious.
sure that every parental generation had these things with their children, but I do feel like in the last year or two, there's been a lot that I'm like,
Yeah.
what? What does that even mean? Although,
And that's probably just social media, like the proliferation of these goes a lot faster, right? A
yeah.
lot wider, faster.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about how you've collected these question and answer sessions with your kids into a course, what you envision for it, how you think it's going to help parents. Is it for just dads and their sons? We were talking about this a little bit earlier that you think it could be useful. And I agree for any parent with their kids, especially teens who start to become a little reticent to have conversations with us. Part of adolescence, it's totally normal, but part of adolescence is to separate oneself from one's parents.
Exactly. And a lot of like the term we use amongst the dads here is the kids are now in the too cool stage, right? The
Yeah.
PC.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so we did it for several weeks. And over the course of the time, we've discovered that there certain questions are better than others. And so we've just kind of developed which ones are most fun, most engaging,
Mm-hmm.
but also practical and informative so that we want to get that information or pull that information out of them without it being too difficult, right? Because if they start to think a little bit too much, then it becomes unnatural and they're just less apt to do it. So, but if it's something fun and easy and engaging for them, then they'll do it and they'll get better at it and improve. And so we're formulating the final questions and or topics and then putting together this course so that really it's just going to be a simple 30-day course that you can go through with your child. And originally also it was just going to be dads and sons because I was doing it with my kids, but my wife felt a little bit left out, and so we've easily adapted a lot of them so that it can be any parent-child combination, father-son, father-daughter, mother-son, mother-daughter type of thing.
Oh, that is such a great resource. I can't wait to purchase it for my kids. And I love that you could do this on repeat. I've seen people who do like an annual birthday interview with their kids and ask them like the same 3 to 5 questions when they're 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up. And that's fun too. But what I love about what you're doing is, we were talking about this too, you get this nice library collection of your kids at a particular point in time, sharing their adolescent thoughts, which is so short-lived. Like the adolescent brain is totally being remodeled. And so I'm sure even a year from now, when you watch these videos with your sons, they're going to laugh at their former selves because they're going to be totally different people with different thought processes every year of adolescence.
Yeah.
So it's just great to be able to capture these moments, even though they're painful moments at times, as you know. Adolescents are not always easy, but it's such a short time in the long scheme of things.
I didn't even think about that, but it is almost like you can make it like a little vlog format. And so, yeah, it's going to be awesome to look back at these several years down the road. Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure by the time your kids are graduating from high school or college or getting married, you'll be able to plug all these videos into some AI thing that'll make you a hilarious series of things that you can, a mashup that you can play that everyone will be laughing about.
Yeah.
But it's great. All right. So if people want to reach out to you, I'm going to make sure that I get your contact information and put it in the show notes. Do you have any email or
so it will be
share now?
Yeah, it will be info@raisetheriz.com. That's raise the Rizz, RIZZ.com. The website, depending when someone watches this, it's Friday, October 18th now. It's not up today, but it will be very soon. At least we'll take some folks on the waiting list, and we'll provide, like, I think we're gonna do 5 days. You can have it for free, and then if you want to continue on, then it'll be a small fee type of thing.
Awesome. I love it. And I think that any listeners out there who have preteens or teenagers, really consider joining this Raise the Rizz program. I think it's a really creative, wonderful way for families to come together. And again, it's not just about us as parents seeing the benefits in our kids, it's about them growing into this more confident version of themselves. I love that you give them a story structure framework. I love that you make them more comfortable communicating, especially given that it is on camera, because as we were saying, so much of our kids' communication with other people is going to be on camera. I mean, this whole Zoom world is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Exactly. And I will say that the best benefit that I didn't even expect has just been the opening the channel of communication and strengthening that bond between us. Because again, these are things you're learning about each other in ways that you never otherwise would have, or at least I didn't with my parents, and even my wife with her parents, who were very communicative, never got to this kind of level. And so it's, that's makes the effort that worth it, 100x fold. Yeah.
I've been talking, I forget which episode it was, but with someone else on the podcast, we came up with this idea of like coming at things through the side door. And I think this is a great example of that. Like, rather than coming directly at our kids, especially teens, and saying like, how was your day? Or what's going on at school, which is the front door, you can come up the side door and be like, hey, want to make a video and practice how you go on YouTube or whatever it is, or want to ask each other questions about this.
I like that term.
And it's just so much less confrontational, more fun. And by being a little unexpected, it's less likely to activate our survival brain pathways that kind of put up a wall and make us resistant to talking and shut down, which for kids is so important. So you've really come up with something.
There's just so many benefits. I can't even explain in words all of the benefits, and there's no downfall to it, right? And and even if you don't use the course Raise the Rizz, you should just do it. Do it.
Yeah.
Come up with your own question. It's a great exercise. I can't recommend it enough.
I know. It's like the simplest things are the smartest and best things. When I hear this, I'm like, that's such a good idea. Why didn't I think of that? But you thought of it and I love it. So thank you so much for sharing it with all of us. And I hope that some people will join you with this. And I can't wait to hear about everybody's outcomes because I'm sure they're going to have awesome stories to share.
I'm so looking forward to the feedback because I know if it's anything like our experience, it'll just be amazing feedback and just, yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This is Kerry Hew. You can find out more about him in the show notes, and please do reach out to him so you can find out how to join Raise the Rizz.
Thank you.